And we are live at Unblocked Podcast, and I'm here with T4Y Podcast. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jeremy. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. I'll play a little intro music and get us going.
Fancy.
It is fancy. This is fun. We're having fun here. We're cooking with gas.
Nice.
Welcome to Unblocked Podcast. I am Jeremy Lee Quinn. This is Unblocked Live every Monday and Wednesday at 1 p.m. Pacific. We talk social issues on Monday and we talk with comedians on Wednesday. This is Unblocked Live. And my guest today is T4Y Podcast, coming to us from Idaho, former Californian. The T4Y stands for Trumper for Yang. Did I get that right?
You did get that right, but we're probably going to go ahead and move that to more of a truth for you, since Yang is no longer in the business of presidential campaigning. He's in the business of New York City campaigning, so we may adjust that.
Adjust that. Now tell me, because people who look at the name and they think to themselves, Trump, Yang, I don't see the connection. Let's start with Yang. What got you interested in supporting Andrew Yang?
Well, supporting Andrew Yang was much easier than supporting Trump, and I found it quite easy to support Trump, especially v. Clinton. But my story is that of I come from the finance sector. Okay, I've been in it 30 years, run my own businesses, founder of the businesses for over 20 years, and I understand economics, and I understand that there's problems on the horizon. Like you said, I'm born and raised in Southern California, Los Angeles area. That's where my businesses are located. I also do work in Arizona. But about 6 years ago now, maybe going on 7, I found it very easy to outsource my people. And to outsource in the conventional sense would be to find another add a body to do a task. My outsourcing was with code. And I was able to automate my office staff away. And it was very easy to do, very cheap. I mean, low 5 figures, and I replaced bodies. And I know that that's the wave of the future. And if you can see that coming, you can see a disaster coming. And when we automated away office staff, we found a lot of free time on our hands. And so we pulled our kids out of school. We have 3 kids. I have a 4th. He's in Hawaii, but he's in college. But school-age kids, there's 3. We pulled them out of school, and we just traveled the country because we have nothing but free time on our hands. And this was during the 2016 election season. So we were down in D.C., New Hampshire primary, the whole bit. We traveled the country and did the whole thing. We actually touched every state except Alaska. And we learned a lot about the country. I clearly saw that Trump was going to take it in 2016. Couldn't believe the news reporting. The news reporting basically giving it to Hillary 100%. But we were on the ground. We were there, much like you do a lot of your work on the ground, and you're kind of bamboozled at what the mainstream media is reporting to what you're seeing live on the ground. And
so you saw something happening, because I said the same thing over the summer, which is as I talked to people, you saw something, this is back in 2016 then, that indicated to you that something was connecting with people. And when you were doing this traveling, are you talking field trip on your own, or were you with, was this a family thing, or who are you traveling?
We basically set up a schedule of what states we wanted to visit, and I wanted to be on the East Coast, during prime time during the campaign season, and we were, like I said, we were out there with the primaries. We were in DC. Hell, I was in DC for Trump's opening of his hotel at the old post office building, which turned into a protest, which we thought it was just going to be an opening, and we're like, okay, this is interesting, and we actually, we're on the local news, but I wasn't even hardcore in Trump's camp. I would say at that point I was more hardcore against Hillary's camp, because I think Hillary is a complete mess and would be absolutely wrong for our country. And but in that case, Trump would be far superior than a Clinton. But to get to your direct question, we talked to people. We were in different places. I wasn't just in NYC or in LA or in Chicago. We were there. We were in Pennsylvania. We were in the heartland. We talked to people that had their jobs exported, and they understood. See, most people generally don't understand economics. They don't know the disaster that NAFTA had. They just know it's hard to find a job, or I lost my job. Well, guess what? Those years killed a lot of jobs, a lot of manufacturing jobs, a lot of good paying jobs. And people understood that. And that was a surprise to me. And it's easy just to say you saw the million Trump signs to the 2 Clinton signs. That's all that's low hanging fruit to pick at. But it's actually the conversations with people. And it was overwhelming support in the meat of the country. And of course, when you hit NYC, of course, Hillary's going to win. DC, Hillary's going to win. Absolutely. But everywhere else said, absolutely not. Trump is going to take this. And yeah, I picked that pony 100%.
Gotcha. Now, I do want to bring something up about how identity politics was playing in already in 2016. But before that, I do want to talk about Andrew Yang and what did you see in his campaign? Because the way you're describing yourself to me, and for what I know of you, is that would you call yourself a swing voter?
Oh, absolutely. I registered as a Democrat for the first time in my 48 years to vote for Andrew Yang. Of course, I switched back after he dropped out in the primary.
Okay. And what was it about his platform that spoke to you?
Yeah, you're right. I didn't answer that question as thoroughly as I should have. After we automated away our office staff, of course, we saw things going really bad. And after we traveled the country, we realized that all the world is not LA, all the world is not DC or New York. And we knew we were moving to the center of the country. We loved it. The people were great, all of that. And that's 10% of the decision to move. 90% of the decision to move was we saw a big wad of it hitting the fan. And as soon as economically, as soon as all the jobs get automated away, what are people going to do, right? And I looked at universal basic income back then, and there weren't a lot of resources. There's a lot of people talking about universal basic income now, but back then there were not a lot of resources to look at. Like I said, I'm a finance guy. I know how to do the numbers. I came up with nearly $3 trillion a year, which of course is a non-starter. So, okay, we're out of here. We're moving to Idaho. Cut our living expenses to a third of what we were before down in Orange County, California. We love it up here. We have property, the whole bit. And so we're just living our quiet life, salmon fishing, gardening, the whole bit, right? Just having a good time. And this guy, Andrew Yang, comes along. And I thought it was kind of a joke campaign at first. This would have been, December of 2018. And I started looking into his policies, and I was shocked. He paid for UBI. He paid for universal basic income with a VAT tax. Okay, so that pays for a third, 40%, depending on how you dial it up. But there's also financial transaction taxes, which I think are absolutely in the right, and we need to go down that road. But he paid for UBI, and we will need UBI. And it's not a case of something that I think should happen. It's going to happen. You simply can't have everybody unemployed and destitute with a few complete winners at the top. It's simply not going to happen. So universal basic income will happen. And I was shocked to see his policy platform. And it's not even UBI. The rest of his policy platform was very, very solid. But by and large, universal basic income. And as I looked into the guy, he is just a good guy. He's not a politician. He's an outsider. And you asked me what the parallels between he and Trump are. And I know a lot of people are going to roll their eyes at this, but they're both outsiders. They're not career politicians. And I know Trump's been in the game, but he's been on the game on the other side, buying the politicians to curry his favor. And he was very clear with that during the primary back in 2015, 2016. And he's right. But Trump, a jerk. Andrew Yang's not a jerk. So they're both outsiders in very different respects. And I like both of their policies, their policy platforms, but they're vastly different. But by and large, I would take Andrew Yang as president of the United States, hook, line, and sinker above anybody else. And that's definitely including Donald Trump. I actually ended up writing him in. Now,
you just in so much is admitted that you were okay voting for a jerk. And
Sure.
I want to sort of qualify that it might be more than just being a jerk. And this is the talking point. We have such a short memory in the United States when it comes to current events and who said what, and we're on to the next story. That Donald Trump entered politics on the birther movement. To people who are of the hard left, especially, who come in, and we'll talk about how Trump supporters are portrayed both in the media and by those who are unforgiving activists in some respect. But if you look at it from their perspective, if this guy came up on the birther movement, which was a lie, and to their talking point, racist, in the sense that we have the first Black American, African American president, and he's going to be politically attacked and his identity questioned, his not just his patriotism, but the fact that he was born in the United States is going to be slandered, and that Donald Trump was at the head of that. How is that not racist? And
well, if you talk about that, we do have short-term amnesia or long-term amnesia with our politics in this country. You're right, and Donald Trump did not cut his teeth during this birther movement. Donald Trump cut his teeth in the late 90s. He was running for president in the late 90s. He's been talking about how the CIA is ripping us off in trade forever. He was very loud, vocal against the signing of NAFTA, of the TPP, all of these things that are extremely important to our country. And sure, can we get caught up on the sensationalism, on the racist stuff? Absolutely, but I choose not to. I think the birther movement was absolutely stupid. I think people get caught up in things like that, and I think that he got caught up in that as well. It's very easy to say, okay, well, Barack Obama was the first Black president, so he's against the first Black president, so he must hate Black people. I just choose not to steer down that road. I don't think that Donald Trump is a racist. If Donald Trump was a racist, I wouldn't back Donald Trump. I don't care if he has the right policies. If somebody hates a group of people in this country that belongs to this country, it's simply not going to fly with me. And so again, I think a lot of that is media driven. Donald Trump will do and say anything to keep himself in the spotlight, and that birther thing was fun stuff to keep him in the spotlight. And so you can take things that the media says and you can run with it, and then before you know it, come 2020, everybody thinks that Donald Trump is racist, sexist, xenophobe, trafficking babies, eating children for breakfast, the whole bit, right? And it's simply not true.
Well, let me push back just a little,
Sure.
because I see what you're saying, but at the same time, because to be clear, I'm against this whole freewheeling guilt by association thing where people are just associating one thing to the next, and you're drawing these guilty verdicts. But when it comes to evaluating the track record of Donald Trump, you said the 90s, but even before that, when you go to the Central Park 5 and him taking out that ad in New York City against innocent young men, people of color, and railing on about the death penalty and stuff like this, they're to people who are tuned in that way to social issues and social justice, it just said no way. And I think that sort of history, that talking point, was able among the social justice movement to stay consistent to a point where it could be transferred on to those who are supporting him. Do I agree with that? No, I don't think everybody who supports Trump is a racist. I take you at your word, and that's how I deal with people. But when it comes to the quality and character of the man, of the leader, do I think he was right for this country? Well, when it comes to race relations, I certainly don't. So how do you respond?
Well, the Central Park 5, you're right. The New York City media went with that they were guilty, right? So it seemed like there was a terrible crime committed, right? And that was his city, right? He was branded as, this is Trump City. And so he was very public about wanting to go against crime. And of course, that was during a time where a lot of people it's hard for people to for those of us that weren't alive, old enough to understand in real time back then, it was a time in the 90s was a time of high crime. In the 90s and as we reached 2000, there was a huge crackdown on crime and on gang activity in New York City, and that was in the ether. That was the ethos of the time and of the place. And so, can we look back with the goggles of today and say, "Oh my God, let's see. He wanted to have the Central Park Five executed. He wanted to disqualify Obama through the birther movement. That's it. Racist." It's two instances, and I would push back with you and do a little bit about what Twitter would call whataboutism, right? In the 90s, if you do the Pepsi challenge with Donald Trump and Joe Biden, you tell me who you come out with being a racist.
Well, I will say that you also have housing to deal with, which is the legacy of racism in the United States. If you really look at redlining, and that's something I'm going to talk about next week with a guest on this podcast. And when you go into housing and how our segregation has manifested itself in the housing market and how certain communities, I talk about in my work walking through Ferguson in St. Louis and seeing that there was just no representation when it came to business ownership within the Black community there itself. And when it comes to building wealth, housing, there's been exclusion. And certainly anybody who, and the Trump family name even, in Tulsa, I'll say one of the leftists was carrying a sign that said "Old Man Trump," and it was a reference to a Woody Guthrie song. Woody Guthrie's landlord was Trump's father, and they talked about the song talks about racist housing policies and so forth. Now, I'm not saying the sins of the father automatically come onto the son, but being in that industry, certainly, I think that resonated on the left, certainly. Now, there's one other thing that I'm going to argue is almost subconscious. Within 24 hours of Donald Trump coming down the escalator, Dylan Roof opened fire in the Carolinas at a African-American church, killing people, and you have the images of him with a Confederate flag. I think when I meet people, and my understanding always evolves as I talk to people. But I think there's a part of this country and people who I know very well, who think in a state of stasis where here's Donald Trump, here's the country, we have racism, we have people with toting Confederate flags who walk into a church and shoot and kill African-American churchgoers, and that this all gets assembled into one almost subconscious narrative that can't be broken. I think for some people, and I'm surprised to hear myself right now taking so much of a apologist tone for people who have screamed racism and white supremacy. But I think that there is something that has been ingrained in the subconscious of the activist left. When I mention all those pieces and you put them together, it can't get beyond. And one person said, as I was publishing my work and it was being essentially, people wouldn't even read it if they were on the left because it was so far from what the media was telling them. A friend of mine said, you're working against the brain here, that certain people are just wired in a certain way. And it's hard to break that. How do you break it when you tell people, hey, I voted for Trump, and they say racist? How have you dealt with that over the last 4 years, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. And let me just push back with you a little bit because you say that there's all these pieces. You brought up one more piece being, like you said, the sins of the father, right? So that was another piece against Trump. That was a piece against Daddy Trump. So we don't have many racist pieces, murderers and rapists and all that. If you go back, I know you well, and I know that you dissected every word of everything that he said. And I'm sure that you don't think that he was calling Mexicans murderers and rapists. I am married to a Mexican woman. Again, I would not support somebody that had those views of what essentially would be my wife and my children. And to answer your question about the pushback that I've received, you're right. Like I said, I'm out here in rural Idaho. There is not a blue voter to be found, right? I'm in the northern part, the beautiful part, and people would think, "Oh my God, Ruby Ridge, isn't that where all the racists live?" This isn't where all the racists live. This is where country people that are unfamiliar with persons of color live, and I honestly don't understand why more people of color don't come out here. And I mean, you can live cheaper, live a better life, and have more stuff. But hey, I digress. When I found Andrew Yang, and let me go back. When I speak with Republicans, when you're a Republican, you basically speak with Republicans. Race is not a topic of conversation. It's just not. I hate that group of people. It's just not something that's said. And we talk finance, we talk taxes, we talk freedom, and of course America, diesel trucks. I'm not that type of Trump supporter that runs around and yells America. But there are people around here that certainly are like that. But again, the topic of conversation is not race. It's just not. And when I found Andrew Yang, I found this very interesting because I became familiar with him. We've talked. He's come on to my podcast, and when I switched over and I got involved with social media for the first time, things changed. I'm hanging out with Democrats now, right? And so at first they celebrate me. Oh my God, this Andrew Yang has brought a Trump supporter to our side, and so that was celebrated, and I got a bit of a following for that. And people would, because I started making videos and things, talking about my story and all of that, and people would be beside themselves, saying, you're a thoughtful person, you care about people, you want to help people with universal basic income. How on earth can you like that monster? And you have conversations and you say, perhaps he's not a monster. Perhaps that is a media driven narrative that has been sunk into your head. Because I have a feeling when you were watching Donald Trump and the silly actor Donald Trump, you're fired, I don't think people were saying that racist bastard. I just don't think that was happening. I think that the racist narrative happened when he announced his run. And at first it was a joke. Everybody laughed at him. But nobody wanted nobody wanted to take him seriously. And then when he started to make a lot of ground, everybody started taking him seriously, and all of the knives came out. Right. So everybody started swiping at him with all claws open. And this is where the racism, like I said, the sexism, the xenophobia, the same policies that were enacted under Obama Biden, say for a travel ban, Trump does, but he's xenophobic. It's you and I share a lot of disdain for the mainstream media, and watching all of this happen over these past 4 years is mind-numbingly frustrating. And you're right. I'm trying to go against fighting against the brain too, because I'm trying to reach out to people and say, look, people on the left and right, we essentially want the same things. The media is dividing us against all this stupid crap, against the racism stuff and this Antifa stuff. And if you're not a white supremacist and you're Antifa, pick a side. No, don't pick a side. Pick the middle, right? We all kind of want the same things, right? We want economic security. When you sit down with somebody, I don't care how far right or how far left they are. I mean, barring insane racist or whatever. And when I say that, I mean on both sides. And that includes some BLM and Antifa people, because I think that you would assert that you've run into some quite racist individuals on those sides. So take those.
I was going to say, wait, just before you get, because this comment plays into that. Mr. Charlie Hustle one here says, not all Trump supporters are racist, but all racists support Trump.
Is that right? So do all Antifa and all BLM supporters support Trump? Because I've seen some abhorrent racism over the past year. Abhorrent, disgusting, in-your-face racism.
And if you go on Twitter, it
Mm,
is pretty
bad.
rancid. And this is just it. Please hold that thought. I don't want to completely interrupt you. But the biggest story of last week was Gina Carano getting fired from Disney, and I have a report that's coming out, which I have retraced the tweet storm back to tweet zero. So you see who starts it, how it gets going, how everybody joins in from past efforts back in January, November, 3 different times that they got this trending, trying to fire her. And when you dissect the actual intentions, there's a lot of hate. There's a lot of hate that's coming from the people who say that they're doing it out of social justice or whatever banner they are flowing. They are projecting unmistakable hate. And then you look at her interviews. She did a podcast interview, I think it was in December, and you can tell that she just doesn't know how to deal with this kind of thing, and that it's a surprise. She made one joke about pronouns, writing beep bop boop or whatever it was. I see jokes about pronouns all the time on Twitter, and that cannot be the most heinous offense by which we're going to draw and quarter this person. And so when it comes to hate and racism, because actually the slur that it starts with is against Carano, when this whole thing, and I'll have that report out. I'm just going to tease a couple things. First of all, subscribe to the podcast, youtube.com/unblocked live. Follow us both on Twitter. You see our handles right there. Check us out. I'm on every Monday and Wednesday. When are you on?
Oh, my schedule is a mess, so I don't even know what I'm doing. Yeah, absolutely.
But you can catch me here Monday and Wednesday afternoons. Again, we talk social issues and politics on Mondays, and we talk with comedians on Wednesday. So after that little interlude there to address that anybody can be racist, the question has always been to me, is there platform racism? And that's where you have to really dig deep and realize, even when you're dealing with the capital, that's not platform white supremacy. It's just not. And even the ADL, we could talk more about who the Capitol rioters were. The Atlantic, I've talked about that article in the Atlantic, and the Chicago Project came out and said only 1 in 10 had affiliations, but those are militia or Proud Boys, which can have, yes, they can have white supremacists, but the groups themselves are not platform. So it really comes down to judging everybody by the very worst fringe actor and painting with a broad brush in that respect. And I have totally bulldozed because I just saw a comment that I wanted to address and a point that had been on my mind. But please, how do you respond to either that, or we could go back to the last talking point?
Well, I'll respond to that and then go back to the last talking point in that order. That, like I said when I responded to it initially, it's just a misnomer, because the left is hung up on racism, on sexism. And by the left, I guess all we can say is social media left, right? Or mainstream media left. I mean, I wish every one of your viewers that would call themselves of the left brainwash themselves in a good way, completely clean their brain. No mainstream media for 6 months.
Oh, you mean like just scrub everything.
Completely clean it and go watch MSNBC on 6 months and 1 day. What the hell are they talking about? Because they're crazy. And is Fox News crazy? Of course. And now we have Newsmax, and even crazier, right? Because Fox News actually has some very decent center of the road reporting. You just have to know who to watch and who not to watch. MSNBC doesn't have that. I don't know if you agree with that, but I certainly haven't found one person on MSNBC that I can watch. Seen her own narrative, of course, and it's just a mess. But to see, that was a social media comment, right? When you say not all Trump supporters are racist, but all racists support Trump.
I've heard it a couple of times. Yeah,
Jesus, you got to stop that.
Yeah, it's a verbatim. It's a verbatim. It's a viral comment,
Mhm.
And what's interesting, like that, a comment like that, it does travel like a virus. And when you look at the Carano um, pylon, you have people that parrot, and they parrot the same talking points, and they just say, you know what, that talking point speaks to my view, who I am, my assessment. Boom, I'm going to repeat that comment uh, as is, so to speak, to speak for me. Well, no, don't let the comment speak for you. You speak and make your own comment. That's my take on all this. And the reason that we get these Twitter storms of people just parroting each other, and then that gets picked up by, and this is a whole other problem, which is I've identified the Twitter to tabloid pipeline. That you can even say it's Twitter to tabloid to TV. It just, the way that these digital media publications, even legacy like Newsweek and Rolling Stone, the way that they're moving is to keep up with like the Vox and the Daily Beast, or heck, even the Washington Post or the Huffington Post. They are all trying to keep up. And in order to do that, when you have a trending topic on Twitter, they jump in on that wave. And it doesn't come down to taking the time to analyzing, well, what was the first tweet and who came in and said what and how did this thing get going? Next thing they're just basically parroting the same opinions from Twitter. And that's what you see so explicitly in the Carano case, is that these talking points, just like that talking point that we just saw on the screen, a talking point comes up, which was she compared Republicans to the Holocaust. Now, in the original post, neither of those words are mentioned, but that talking point gets parroted over and over again. Next thing you know, it's taken up by a fan site, like a site that's about film that has like 175,000 followers that just blogs about film all day. Even the original tweeters, one of them, the one that made that comment that I just referenced, was only a 2-month-old account that had tweeted about Star Wars 4,000 times in 2 months. And that account of quite possibly, you could say, an obsessed person that tweets about Star Wars 4,000 times in 2 months, that person's one non-capitalized sideways thought, where they didn't even capitalize the word Holocaust, that gets parroted over and over and over again. And then Vox and Daily Beast just go right into that wave, and they get on it, and then they just ride it for again, a marginal amount of profit. Next thing you know, Rolling Stone has it, the Washington Post, whoever is just, and you can't go against the wave, because that if you're on that wave and you try to go against it, you just get smacked in the face, right?
Well,
Then
I went against that wave, and it has smacked me in the face on the internet. So if you look at Twitter, I am this horrible racist, sexist guy, right? Like, what the hell are you guys talking about? Boy, because I support Trump, and what you're saying about the escalation of things is they say, yeah, and right. Oh, this guy's a racist, and then they add their own thing to get their little hearts and their little likes and their little retweets. And, maybe they have aspirations of eventually making it to a Vox or a, God forbid, MSNBC. But it's a step ladder of pseudo journalism that we find today, and it's like you said, it starts off in social media with aspirations to go to mainstream media. And where's the incentive to push back on that and say, hey guys, wait a minute. Maybe this wasn't a racist thing. Maybe this woman wasn't going after the Holocaust and minimizing the Holocaust. And I believe that she's a person of color. I'm not exactly sure. I don't know what ethnicity she is, but you don't hear Republicans saying, hey, you're going after her because she's a person of color. That is a monopoly owned by the Democrats. And so you continue to do that year after year. And the Democrats are the ones that own the banner of non-racism, which means the other side owned the banner of racism. And it's just simply not true. It's an old narrative. And, that's what I was going to say when back a couple of years ago, when I was campaigning pretty hard for Andrew Yang. And then he drops. And now I'm a Republican in a den of Democrats. And now the gloves come off, even against, old cohorts of people that we were in the same corner. I've always had in my bio that, hey, if, I'm going to fight for Yang, but if he's not on the ballot, I'm going to vote Trump again. And I've stated my reasons why I'm going to vote Trump. And I think that I make a pretty decent argument for those things. And all of a sudden, it's the racist thing. It's how in the hell am I why are you calling me a racist? And then everything explodes. And then all of a sudden I'm the bad guy on Twitter. And it's just because there's not a lot of Trump Twitter. And the algorithm forces people that are going to have conflict that are going to be retweeted because they want to see the activity. And so the algorithm forces people into conflict, and it reinforces your bubble. You think you're right and everybody is on your side, and anybody that steps outside your narrative must be evil. And like I said, out come the claws. And social media is absolutely undoing the fabric of this society. And we need to have a collective awakening against that. It's not just social media. Like I said before, it is mainstream media. We need to stop fighting with each other over a bunch of BS reasons that are dictated to us. Again, take 6 months off, look at it with new eyes, and you're going to be shocked at how stupid the whole thing is. If we all work together, we could actually have a government that we actually deserve. We could have economic policy that we deserve. We could have trade policy that we deserve, and we can start thinking for ourselves, and we can have a country for ourselves, and not by, for, and of corporate media and corporations and dare I say the elite, but they are who run the media franchises.
Yeah, and the other incentivized quality of social media is you get likes, especially if you're on Twitter where you have a limited number of characters. You get engagement by attacking the other person, by engaging in ad hominem attacks, which I'm sure that as someone who has their reasons for voting the way that you do, that those reasons and actually engaging with those issues. Tell me if I'm wrong. I'm just assuming on what I have seen across the country over the last year that engaging with the content is secondary to attacking the character and defaming somebody, because that is what gets play. That's what gets more people to join in on the beatdown.
Likes and retweets. It's that right. Dopamine hit. And so look, I love the argument. I welcome any argument of policy on Twitter, on social media, on anything. Bring it. Let's talk policy. Okay. Let's have an intelligent conversation about policy. And I've been known to kind of smack back on Twitter a little bit, because when people come at me with saying the racist thing, it's offensive. It really is. And I know Republicans aren't supposed to get offended by things, but damn, man, you get called a racist so many times, your knuckles start to get sore from smacking back. And then you catch yourself and damn it, I'm doing what the algorithm wants us to do. Right. And it's not conducive to bringing people together. So you really have to force yourself to step back and either not engage or try to engage in an earnest conversation, which oftentimes is not possible.
It's oftentimes it's not, but what it does is exposes the spinning of the wheels by those who only want to emotionally engage. So that's where that word being dispassionate, I think, comes in a very kind of Zen way. And that word dispassionate was used, I think, I remember it very prominently when Sam Harris used the word dispassionate when he talked about in his podcast about being on the brink, and he was talking about a dispassionate discussion of data when it comes to police brutality and understanding where we are and what changes we need to make for police reform. I think Brett Weinstein used the word dispassionate the other day, but this idea that we're going to look at this empirically and try to figure out where we can agree, what the actual data is, because that's that's really the non-starter, is that if people are overly animated with their political passions, they won't even look at the source material. They won't even look, because they'll just go by what the Twitter talking points, the viral points are that they got from a Vox article, or they got from, and I'm sure it's on the right too. And maybe you can tell me or enlighten me as to how have you seen this now in the Gina Carano case. I mean, that was so explicit. And as I said, I have a piece that maps it out from tweet zero, and you see how it unfolds. And I theorize and want to spend a little more time looking at how there is this vulnerability, this misinformation from Twitter, which creates these waves of misinformation that are then promoted by unscrupulous players. And that can be anyone from somebody that's at the activist publications that I mentioned, could be somebody in the mainstream media. It can be somebody who's in the Southern Poverty Law Center or the ADL, which we need to be fair organizations that look at hate, look at it empirically, and look at it holistically. Not just we're looking at hate from those people over there and only that. Because then if you let these people get away with everything online or every which way, that's going to create those people you're looking at to be more inflamed. So you have to look at hate holistically. Again, I've appealed to the ADL and to the Southern Poverty Law Center to be more journalistic in their coverage, in the sense that talk to people who are on the ground. I was one of them. I had representatives that were working with me in June when I was investigating white supremacist infiltration. Once I found out that wasn't a thing, they didn't want to talk to me anymore. That's a huge problem if we're only going to look at things from one partisan perspective. We have to look at this stuff holistically. I saw that a reporter, I can't remember his name, it's like Michael something, on Twitter. I got shut down in the SPCL, SPLC rather, press junket. They were announcing their report on extremism. And I brought up all these issues from the left and said, how are we also addressing this? And I asked the question to support with evidence that the Capitol was about maintaining white supremacy. Was their conclusion. I said, well, where's the supporting evidence? Because I was there, and you know what nobody talked about? Race.
Exactly.
Just like your point about we don't sit around talking about race all day.
Right.
I was at the Capitol. They were talking about railing against big tech.
Freedom and China.
Freedom, the Constitution,
Right.
This is not, and again, doesn't mean that I defend, what goes down at the Capitol and uprising and revolution and the loss of life and I'm just saying race was not what anybody was talking about. Even the one group of nationalist youth, which the difference between the ADL assessment and the University of Chicago assessment is they say that like 90% are non-affiliated, the University of Chicago, the Chicago Project, that only 10% were like group affiliated Proud Boys and so forth. The ADL ups that to 25%. They say 25% were group affiliated, but that's because they include QAnon. So if somebody had QAnon beliefs, they count that as being group affiliated. So all of a sudden you've doubled from 10% group affiliated to 20% affiliated. Then they also include another group, which maybe should be included. It's this youth nationalist thing called the Groypers. And I've seen them around. I've seen them like in Atlanta when I was covering protests. And they're very alt-right youth. And I don't know enough about it to empirically say, okay, these are white nationalists or these are nationalists that are white. I've seen them also consort with Philip. His name's Philip Anderson. I interviewed him. He's the guy who got his two front teeth punched out in San Francisco before his rally against big tech could even begin. It's the only hate crime that's been charged against Antifa. It was Berkeley Antifa that led the crowd, a huge black bloc presence. They punched this guy's two front teeth out, and it was black on black, and they charged the guy with a hate crime. So, which that's, you get in a whole other sort of category of how this is being processed. But my question is to the ADL and to the Southern Poverty Law Center has been, well, this is a hate crime. How are you not giving a statement on a hate crime? And they're just not. They're not interested to look at this holistically. I really just went in that direction. What are your thoughts?
Well, they're if you're going to compare them to the mainstream media's views and clicks, their views and clicks are donations and rage. So if you can outrage somebody, you're going to open their wallet, right? And so if you see the Southern Poverty Law Center come out and say, okay, we got this wrong. It wasn't a white nationalist, white supremacist crowd that ambushed the White House. Do you think that their donations are going to go up or they're going to go down? And it's like I said, it's a sad state of affairs. And your question to me is, how do we change this? I throw it right back to you. How the hell do we change this? How do we get to people? How do we get to people, quote unquote, on the other side and say, look, I'm not bad. I don't think you're bad. Let's talk about this. Don't let them egg us on anymore. Because, all of a sudden BLM Antifa, right? Railing against the Proud Boys is now it's the chess game of America. That's everybody falls into those two categories. And it's a misnomer. It's irresponsible, and the reporting has done our country an incredible disservice. And now we are at the point that we're at each other's throats, and we need to be able to fix this. And I just don't know how. I've been making videos for about a year, trying to talk some sense into people. I see that you're trying, and I applaud you. I applaud you actually, having the cojones to get out there and you entered the Capitol, man. That was genius. It was brilliant. And I applaud you for that, because you're able to report what it was and what it wasn't. And you came out, by the time you came out, I don't know if Biden had already done his racist, his racial narrative tweet yet. But you must have come out saying, wait a minute, guys, why are you all talking about race? This wasn't a race thing. What are you guys doing? And then I don't know how your business goes, right? If in another life, man, if I had 20 years off of my age, I would love to start something that you're doing. I would love to be out there with a camera and sticking it in people's faces and getting the truth. So I don't know if you go out and you farm out to mainstream media or to publications and say, hey, look, this is a story. This is a responsible story. This is the truth. I want you to air this. I want you to print this. And I don't know. Do they just say, nah, it's not for us?
I would estimate that I have sent over 300 emails since June, bugging the same publications over and over again. A big part of what I do is, and the Southern Poverty Law Center and the ADL as well. How do we change this? We need to get people to embrace journalism instead of attacking each other. That's how we get. This is how we fix, everything. And the comment that I made on this, I was just mentioned because the Southern Poverty Law Center, one of their guys calls himself like the senior reporter. Like they're saying journalist.
Wow.
But how do you claim that title and then attack somebody else? And the person that he was attacking was Andy No, who himself is a target for hate. And there have been, graffiti, calls to kill him. And people have shown up at his family's home on Halloween, and he's been harassed. Now say what you want about his reporting. It's partisan. It's narrow. It's this. whatever that criticism is, we should be able to discuss the actual material specifically one by one and have a discussion. Again, the word is dispassionate. Again, was there something that was unethically edited? I've called out 1 or 2 videos myself, and that was tweeted out by him or whatever. Are we talking about a specific article or a specific person that was named that this was harmful, or that this was not an ethical naming, or it was close to doxing? Whatever it is, get specific with each of those situations. Don't come out there just because you think you're going to get 150 likes and say, Andy No or whoever is this and this and this. Also, this person is this and just a blank for a what was the word? What a junk newspaper. Well, and this dude is tweeting this, and it's like, no, you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to be a journalist. You're supposed to be somebody who parses. If you have issue with another journalist, invite him on to a podcast and talk with that person, have a discussion and argue, and then part ways. But don't get off. Don't get off on your tweet and the retweets that it gets and all of the likes and all of the engagement that you are being lauded for. It's just getting off, and we need to stop that. We need to stop that across the boards and start doing journalism again, regardless of whether it's profitable. And that was the stance that I took as of last May, was I'm going to do this regardless of, and I said I'm not going to make any money for the duration of the project, and I haven't taken a single cent. I haven't set up a single Patreon. Now, I know I can't do that forever, but the point has been to just deal with the material, just deal with the people on the streets, just deal with the people on the other side of the camera, whether I agree with them or not. Here, you and I, we haven't even gotten into, policy and what we agree and disagree on. That's because there's a much bigger issue that I think both you and I see, which is that there's a failure. There's a failure in our system where online engagement is dictating to publications and legacy publications that should be there to be the paper of record, or to be magazines that are able to engage us for a longer period of time and get us to look at evidence and think about things and hear from different opposing viewpoints. All of that has been hijacked. And it doesn't matter if it's Star Wars fans, QAnon adherents, social justice warriors and anti-fascists, or if it's Stop the Steal. The vulnerability is being exploited by all of them. It's the same vulnerability, and it's emotionalizing and projecting opinions that are so polarizing into content that, yes, they will trend. Yes, they will engage. They will pick you up. You'll be able to play that Ford Focus or whatever the ad is that keeps going, or the Cadillac or whatever it is, you'll be able to play that once, maybe, and someone will watch it. So what? At the end of the day, we're getting distorted trash media that is mostly falling over itself and disguising opinions as fact.
Well, first off, I would encourage you to start monetizing. I would encourage you to open up a Patreon account, because you know what? We need people like you. I haven't done any of that because this isn't my day job, baby. I run businesses. I've got my own thing going. This is just something that I see all the hypocrisy, and I want to jump on. I mean, dude, I'm the biggest introvert that you'll meet. I have no business talking to people on YouTube. But someone like you that's going out and getting things done, I want you to make a living at this. I want you to be able to go in spots. And with that, it's money. You need money. And I hope that you can start to monetize this without, of course, being called a grifter on Twitter. You know how that goes. I've been called a grifter. I've been called a grifter many times, even though I haven't taken a dime. I've lost tons of money on equipment and everything.
Yeah, me too.
It's stupid. But it's funny. And then you haven't made any money. Oh, okay. You're a grift because you want the spotlight. Like, Jesus. Okay. But So I hope that you go that route, because I want this to be the future. I want this to be the future of anybody that is willing to grab a camera and a mic and go out there and talk to people and get the real truth, because that's the only way that we're going to slay this Goliath that is the mainstream media, because they've got money behind them. You don't see them saying, "Oh, well, we're not going to run this ad because I want to do the right thing." Yeah. So let's get the good guys on the ground, and let's get them armed. And when I say armed, I mean with money and with equipment, with time, resources that you can go cover the stories that are important. And when you speak of Andy No, largely it's just raw video that I see from him. Now, do I see carefully edited things and the way that he leans? I certainly do. I wish that he wouldn't lean like that from time to time, but compared to the mainstream media, it is nothing. And when you see Andy No's reporting, you see video of what is going on. And that is key to understanding what is happening on the ground in this country. And when the media was deciding to not cover Portland, as if nothing is happening in Portland, and I run into you mentioned Brett. We bump into each other on Twitter, of course, and it's when it's when we started Unity 20, right? We got our Yang gang, the Yang supporters, involved with that to try to get a middle ground started in this country. No more crazy left, no more crazy right, no more hate, no more racism. No, you just stop. Let's have a conversation, like you were saying, to policy. Let's talk about policy and the way and how 80% of us in this country want the same things, right? So let's get people to run for office that are like that can sidestep the media. But I digress. Sorry, kind of go off when we talk about Brett. Brett was arguing with people in my group, because they have their claws out for me, because I'm now this evil Trump supporter, which I always was, without the evil part. And now I'm involved with Brett, right? And so now we're trying to throw the election to Trump. Brett is far further left than anybody I know, and he'll tell you he's a self-proclaimed crazy lefty, right? And if he and I can get along, I mean, anybody can get along. You and I can get along. Anybody can get along. If we have policy disputes between us, let's talk it out. But it doesn't have to ever come down to hate. I mean, that's where the country has come from. But Brett's arguing with people, from my side, unfortunately. By my side, I mean Yang supporters, which then are Democrats, that there's nothing going on in Portland. What the hell are you talking about? This is all hyperbolic. And Brett's like, hey, I live in Portland. I just rode my bike over by the police station, by the courthouse. And people did not know that there were some crazy things going on in Portland, because the mainstream media didn't want to run with that narrative yet. So it's all peaceful protests. You remember the funny thing with CNN where it's all fires behind them and saying mostly peaceful protests.
Peaceful, yeah, right.
What are you talking about? And so
Yeah.
Portland's not happening. The Seattle thing, the Chaz, is just a fun summer of love.
Right.
What?
Or when Portland was happening, it was only happening because the government was sending vans out to snatch people. Then all of a sudden it was happening on a national level,
right,
but it
Nancy
wasn't
stormtroopers.
Yeah. I got the thing that really got me. I don't know if I talked to you about Michigan on December the 5th, where the headlines of mainstream media were plastered with supposed armed protesters who had descended on the Michigan Secretary of State's home just as she was about to watch The Grinch That Stole Christmas with her kid. And this she went on Anderson Cooper, and armed protesters showed up. The only problem with that coverage was nobody was armed of those protesters. And it took me ripping the video, putting a filter on, brightening it, and then studying it like 4 or 5 times. It's a half-hour video. I spent a couple hours just watching it. And I said, these are not militia. There's not a flak jacket. These aren't militia. Like, I know what militia are now. I know every group that's out there. These are what I call normie Trump supporters. They're just They're just regular people, and they don't have guns. So why are they being called armed protesters yelling obscenities? That's the other thing. I listened to the tape again. Not one cuss word. When I sent the tape to the deputy communications director. He was the communications director for the Secretary of State. And he picks up the first time I call him. And I said, hey, I sent you that video. It shows that there were no armed protests. I got to go. And he hangs up on me. And he, to this day, I still email them. And I still every now and then send a text or call and say, hey, I'm still waiting for comment. That'll be the name of my book. Still waiting for comment. By Jeremy. Yeah, by Jeremy Lee Quinn. I'm still waiting for comment there's so many situations like this though.
Kyle Rittenhouse.
What do you mean? How?
I mean, you and I both did the same thing when the Kyle Rittenhouse story hit, right? Armed white supremacist.
Oh, the white supremacist.
Cross to kill Black Lives Matter protesters.
Right. And
oh my God. Right. And so you look into the story, you dig deep. I'm a nobody. I've got YouTube. I can go and, BG and all of these guys, you can go through and you can dissect all of this video and you can get to the damn truth. And I got to the damn truth just like you did. He was not a white supremacist. He wasn't there to mow down peaceful protesters. It's just all insane. And this is the reporting that we're dealing with. But
this is the Twitter pipeline. And just like I did for Star Wars, I think I need to go back now and look at Kenosha and look at where did white supremacists show up in the Twitter storm first? How did it get? And what you do is, this is my methodology, is you look at you search the tweets by the hashtag or by the mention, and then you see which ones got over 5,000 likes or whatever, and you look at the big contenders, then you look at their history, and you see that some of these accounts, just like in Star Wars, they were dedicated to this one sole purpose, which is to basically call everybody a white supremacist. That's what this account's identity and engagement is based on. I'm sure that if I go back to Kenosha, I'll find that it came from Twitter, because everything's coming from Twitter. And that's why you got the white supremacist talking point at the Capitol going. And I got into it with Robert Evans, an Antifa journalist who writes for publications like Business Insider and stuff like that. I got into it because he tweeted, if this were people of color, they would have been shot with live rounds. And I was there, and I was like, somebody just got shot and killed with live rounds,
Right.
So I think it's the only time that I've emotionally engaged and been just like, no, I'm here. Just everybody shut up and ask me what happened.
Well, there's your book title too. Everybody shut up and ask me what happened. Volume 1. Yeah, absolutely.
But you know what I mean? Because not only was this activist in the Pacific Northwest able to, I don't even know if that's where he is right now, but that's where he was when he was covering Portland and had the most influence. But not only is this person who has like 180,000 followers or whatever it is, able to get that talking point out there and charge it out there, because he's connected with a couple of other accounts that have 100,000 plus followers. So this thing just gets launched out that it's white supremacists, it's white supremacy at the Capitol, and that it's armed insurrection was trending on Twitter. And to this day, nobody's been able to show a firearm. There are only 3 arrests in the vicinity of the Capitol that were not in the Capitol itself. 2 of them were on the east side, one just like a half a block away or the start of the next block, and then another entire block away. One of them was a person coming back to his car. They had discovered the firearms in the car, and then the guy came back, and then they got him. Another one is marked visitor center. So there's 3 arrests for that demographic. That's actually impressive, because that doesn't differ from the number of arrests at the other Washington, D.C. rallies at Freedom Plaza, which were like called the Million MAGA March and Million MAGA March 2. So there wasn't an increase of guns all of a sudden on January 6th at the Capitol, yet armed insurrection trends. Everybody still thinks, and I think some politician came up and said it wasn't an armed insurrection. Everybody was like, but it wasn't. I'll say it. It wasn't an armed insurrection. And people can debate me on that or show me evidence. If you think that it was, show me the picture, show me the police report. I've already posted and hyperlinked in my final work that there were only 3 gun arrests.
And
I don't
the
know.
headlines of the pipe bombs found at the Capitol. Okay, well, it turned out that it was at the RNC and the DNC. That's now video evidence that it was placed the night before. We don't know who did that, and this is the danger because you know what? That's sexy, baby. Let's click on that. Let's watch that video. I've got to see that story because pipe bomb Capitol. Woo, love it. White supremacists, Trump supporters placing pipe bombs. Oh man, I got to read that. And that's what we need to get away from. And I would be very interested if you were to do your Twitter hunt that you did on the Kenosha story that you did with the Star Wars person. I forget her name. Where can we find that? Did you make a video of that? Because I haven't seen that, and I would really like to trace the origin of that.
Yeah, so that's currently I waited to bring it up later in this cast because it's currently I'm currently waiting for some responses on it, but my hope is to get it out in the next 24 hours or so. But that I went into a deep dive. But what it showed me is you can trace this stuff. You can trace how opinions are being channeled and accepted as fact into online media outlets. Wholesale, they're just being taken, and these stories clone each other. Now, this is interesting. I mentioned there were 2 points of frustration, especially with mainstream media, that I had. The first one was December the 5th. I mentioned that hogging all the headlines were these imagined armed protesters in Michigan. Meanwhile, I'm in Sacramento, in Black Bloc, in traveling with Berkeley Antifa Sacramento. The 2 groups had gotten together last on October 17th. That's when they punched out the 2 front teeth of Philip Anderson, the right-wing black organizer. Hate crime charges come out of that. They reconvene up in Sacramento on December the 5th. Well, you want to talk about a story. They attack the Capitol, the police in front of the Sacramento Capitol. They're launching fireworks. They're throwing liquids at Trump supporters. The Proud Boys are there too, and they're kept penned up. So they don't let the Sacramento police managed to keep the Antifa attacking groups separate from the right-wing MAGA protest. Then the Antifa groups are repelled back. They decide to leave and go on a march, and they bash out every single window of every car that has any kind of American flag or any kind of Trump bumper sticker. Not only that, they jump a young couple and they curb beat them. This young couple, one of them had a red hat, and the other was wearing like a tie, and they just beat on him. And I have pictures of a guy. This is on my website, publicreport.org. If you go to the final report, I talk about this day, December the 5th, because for me, it will live in infamy, because this guy, I have a video of him walking away with a club where he's just beaten these 2 people. I can't get anybody to write about it. Even the local news in Sacramento, one station covered it and they completely botched the headline. It says violence breaks out at right-wing rally in Sacramento. Wait. And I've just watched these 2 imaginary groups at Berkeley Antifa, at Antifa Sac _. That's how imaginary they are. You will definitely not be able to find them on Twitter. Hey, take a look. I
have Antifa people on Twitter following me. I don't know why, but I do. Yeah. It is what it is.
They're real. They're real.
Watch my tweets, respond to them. Let's engage.
I'm always willing to talk to these people too, and because I think, but they know that you have a uh, sedating effect to have rational conversations, so they won't have it. The people who are in the there's a guy, Daryl Lamont Jenkins, who I interviewed last September. He won't talk to me anymore because he knows that I'm going to engage on the material, and then I know too much now, and I will whoop him at any kind of any kind of debate. I'll just he won't stand a chance. And look, Daryl, that's me saying come and debate me, because I will win, because I know more than you do, because I've been out there and I've seen it and I've lived it and I've experienced it, and you're reading about it from people who you already agree with, who are just regurgitating your very own talking points. And that's why, and he doesn't want that world to crumble. He knows if he goes into a chat or a space like this, I will bring specific event that I experienced after specific event. And he won't be able to hold a candle to it. He just won't. And that's why they don't want to talk to you, is because they'll lose the narrative that they are in control of.
And the worst part is the people that think that they understand what's going on because they get fed the stories through the mainstream media, and they try to engage. And, you do your best to make sense, to have a civil conversation with people. And it just comes from such a spot of hate that it's very difficult to cut through that, especially on a medium like Twitter. And that's why YouTube like this is so much better. We're talking, for over an hour. And, I get to know you, you get to know me, the audience gets to know two different sides of politics. I mean, I'm of the right. I mean, I actually have socially liberal ideas. You're obviously I would think that that's a fair classification. And, we have, people in the audience like Burning Mandela here spouting off, calling you a liar, that there were people arrested with firearms. Son, listen to me. There was one crazy person, right? That was there with the Molotov cocktails in the truck. Absolutely. I don't know the full story. I'll bet you Jeremy does.
Which day are we talking about? I don't know what we're talking about right now.
He's going back to, I would trust the DC. I believe that's the guy. If you go down a couple of comments, actually one up from where you were, where he was found with 3 guns and the 11 Molotov cocktails in his truck. Were there QAnon crazy people that thought that there was going to be some kind of a violent insurrection there? Absolutely. Was it as large as the media made it seem to you? Absolutely not. And so when Jeremy says the small amount of gun arrests that were there, the small amount of guns that were being brandished that he saw because he was there, and I was there with him because he brought in the camera. And so I put the onus on you to back your claims up, because you're the exact person that we want to reach, because you're talking to your friends at the water cooler at work. You're talking to your friends on social media saying, nah, it's all a lie. There were all kinds of gun violence at the Capitol. And, man.
I see what's going on here. Okay. So I said there were 3 arrests. There were 3 gun arrests, 2, as I said, on the eastern side of the Capitol. One of them is marked Visitor Center by Metropolitan Police. Of the 3 arrests, the one that he's referring to, it says Lonnie Kaufman had 3 guns. Now, I don't know the name of everybody arrested, so I would have to fact check this. I don't know.
We could assume it's the guy in the truck with all the Molotov cocktails, I assume.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, I'm not going to dispute that somebody showed up with, it sounds like, ready to go. That does not, but what I am saying is not only did I not see any guns, but every other reporter that I've compared notes with didn't see any guns at the Capitol either. And that's an important distinction, which is, and again, when I say every other reporter, I'm talking about BG on the scene, who, if you follow this stuff and I interviewed him. I've asked each of these guys this, Ford Fisher, Richie McGinnis, who does the Daily Callers video team. So I've talked to each of these people who I know were there, and they saw no guns. somebody said they weren't looking for it. And I remember saying back to them, well, I sure was looking for it. I wanted, I had my eyes peeled for that for sure. It's a huge part of the story. So do these people exist? Well, we know 3 of them exist that showed up with, ready to rumble, so to speak. But that doesn't make me a liar. That just makes me emphasizing one part of the story over another. Now, if I'd come in and said, come in hot with that information, then, maybe I would, you'd consider me more truthful, but this is why we have these conversations. You come up with something, I'll fact check it, make sure it's true. I haven't followed Lonnie Kaufman. I don't know every single person that was arrested, but, it would be interesting to follow up on. So this is what's exciting about an interactive, chat like this, is somebody can come in and say, hey, I got you,
Mm-hmm.
And it might feel good to call somebody a liar, but I assure you, not only is that never my intent, but I fact check what I say pretty well. So if you have more information, then that's helpful, but it doesn't go against the I never said there were no guns. In fact, I said explicitly that there were 3 arrests of individuals on firearms charges. So that doesn't make me a liar. And, I know it's fun, but.
Right. And so now, Bernie Mandela here has his moment of coming in, calling you a liar and having, half facts. And, but he doesn't bring any kind of proof to what he's saying. There's so many more people arrested at DC than what you're claiming. Let's look at that. Bring the facts and let's have a conversation. It seems that the person just mysteriously disappeared. So, if I was a Democrat, I would say Russia.
Right. Coming in with the, what does this mean? I'm just going to look something up that.
Hey, you have BG on the scene in here. Check your DMs, brother. I sent you a DM. I'd love to have you on my channel. Because what you and BG do, it is. You can't put a dollar on the wealth of information that you guys are bringing, because we wouldn't know what's going on, and we obviously can't rely upon the mainstream media. Sure as hell can't believe anything that you see on social media, because they're just regurgitating what they see on the mainstream media. And so what you guys do is large. You shut up and you shoot, right? You film. It's beautiful. And that's what's going to take down legacy media. When somebody can find it exciting to watch a current event, sit down, shut up, watch it for an hour, watch the whole thing as if you were there, instead of watching some pretty little talking head tell you with a sensational spin what happened in a sensational manner and in hyperbolic manner. And I hope that people like you are able to take down the legacy media, and so we can really take back this country, because we have a lot of work to do, and we're facing some trying times economically. And so economics are very important, and we are caught up with racism. We're caught up with white supremacy. These crazy white supremacists that are taking over the country that none of you guys have been able to really find often. And we need to stop that, and we need to come together, and we need to talk policy, because we have a big storm coming down the pike in automation, and we really need to be able to work together and kind of throw the bums out in DC, and really get politicians in the seats that can work for us. And it all starts with the media narrative, because they're the ones that have blown us up. They really have.
Yeah, again, it's also examining. They're going to have this panel on misinformation, which I shudder to think how that would go. But
brought to you by the misinformationalists.
Yeah, exactly. Misinformation brought to you by politics.
Yeah. Who's putting on that panel?
I bookmarked it. It's some House energy of something commerce committee or something or other that but I'm going to write them. I'm going to say, oh man, I got a ton of misinformation for you. Got a ton.
Sure.
Because the way that this is working, the way that everything is emotionalized, as I call this pipeline from Twitter, that is basically, and there was an interesting comment a second ago about NPR. Let me see if I could find it. It made me think for a second. Where did it go? But somebody said, I thought it was weird when NPR reporters started getting Twitter account. Oh, here it is. I thought it was strange when NPR reporters started giving out their Twitter handles. Well, yeah, because
follow my opinions as I'm supposed to report the news.
Right. I mean, wasn't that the great oasis of NPR, was that you could just show up and you'd hear something very similar to what we're doing right now, which is just people talking, exchanging ideas, and not being beholden to one sector of, or I guess the wave of trending gossip. It would be nice if NPR wasn't, because they don't need to be, right? They don't have the same revenue demands that certainly if you're the Daily Beast or Raw Story. Oh, I got to tell you this. Raw Story took my video from the Capitol, and they basically, what happens is they're moving so quickly, they clone these articles. So if something's trending, somebody's video is out there, they just rip the stills and they just take it and they make their article. Now I contacted the publisher, and I said, hey, I even sent you an email before telling you I was going to be there. And you guys, and she claimed she had no idea. And this is what she said of the ethical lapse. Where can I find it? I want to give an exact quote here so that you get an understanding of how much they're hedging, how much volume they're turning over. And I can't seem to find it. Let me see. It'll come right up.
Well, but, as you find that, they obviously didn't want your truthful narrative. They wanted a narrative that they can spin. And the non-narrative of NPR is long gone. In the Trump era, they caught TDS just like everybody else. And so there are the resources that we can turn to of completely objective news is so small. You know, we've got Greenwald. We've got some people that we can turn to, but it's few and far between. And there's certainly no organization that we can turn to that we can feel good about. Even now, The Intercept, they've lost their way. And so now we've just got to find people that are independent and looking for the truth. And, you know, there's a small handful of them. I put BG in that. And, you know, we have to stop watching mainstream media. Don't get your news from mainstream media. I can't believe that people are still watching it. If you know you're being fed a narrative, why in the hell would you want to watch that? It doesn't make any sense to me.
It doesn't. And what's happening is you're getting so many young people who are coming in to these positions, or writing for the Daily Beast, or writing for Vox, or writing for the Intercept, whoever, who are coming in first as activists and as journalists a distant second, if not at all. You know, people are not going into this as honest brokers. They're going into it with an agenda that they have been indoctrinated with, quite frankly, because there's no other way for me to describe it. When I see paralyzation in the media, which is what I've seen since June, in trying to really just get people to address how complicated, messy, and nuanced the truth is, there's very little interest in it. It's like, nope, we got this other thing that's working already. And that's what the Raw Story said to me. You know, initially I pitched them when I was in DC, and I said, no, it's complicated because people are attacking each other in the streets, but you got this group from that side, then you have that group, the other side, that's attacking the hotels that group is staying at. And what I got back was, we already have this story. Our story is much different than yours.
Wow.
But see, you asked what I do. I stay engaged with these people because they can't ethically, they can't just say, you know what, you're too much of a pain in our ass because you're there. They have to at least listen to me. So after my video is stolen at the Capitol and it's ripped and the images are used, the publisher for Ross story, her name is Roxanne, she wrote me back of the ethical lapse, quote, "We do about 80 to 100 stories a day and publish about 20 hours a day."
They must have a staff of thousands, right?
No.
to properly vet each story and make sure it's accurate.
Right. Yeah, exactly. You're hedging. That's your business model, is to hedge on 80 to 100 stories. Well, how many of those stories are vetted? How many of those stories have been researched and enterprised and at least verified, and you've attributed information from the ground up so that you know those 80 to 100 stories that you're putting out there, that you're not getting duds, that you're not just feeding people misinformation that you got from Twitter. And that's the problem. If it's trending on Twitter, they're not going back and they're not enterprising that story, or they're not vetting it. They're just going with it and say, this is what was said on the internet and this is what somebody else said. And then these stories just get mass cloned if they're trending, and the truth is left way behind. And that's where we are. And that's,
No, absolutely. And since I'm slowly creating a Trump fan out of you, I have two questions for you. I have two questions for you.
Rewind the tape if you're just joining us.
That's just going to be a clip for me to put out on Twitter later. I have two questions for you. What did you think about that? I believe it was a story in the Times where they almost in a backpattingly way, that there was a secret cabal behind the scenes of powerful actors that really kind of placed a narrative of how evil Trump was, and they basically got Biden into office.
You're talking about Time. You're talking about Time magazine.
Okay, I didn't know if it was in the Times or in Time. Okay, so Time magazine. I've
seen a lot of shares of that. I actually haven't read that article. Oh. I've seen a lot of people share it. Do I feel that people were of that point of view, of that singular mindset, that we just have to get rid of Trump? Absolutely. Yeah. So I think I didn't read the article because instinctually I'd been told. I had this one professor I know who I'm still in touch with, and who was so singular of mind. He said to me back in the summer when I was coming out with, I was like, no, but there's all these like left-wing groups that are burning down small businesses and this and that. And I can't get anybody to even look at it. And I remember him saying, well, there is kind of just one. There is one. It was a very honest assessment. There's one mission right now. There's one focus, and that's getting Trump out of office. I think that if you are on the left, you certainly, if you're on the inflexible left, the unwilling to budge in any way, that it would have never been considered that you would be a swing voter of any kind over the last 4 years, then my explanation was always, well, wait till after the election, then they'll talk about it. Then it was, well, wait till after the inauguration, or wait till after the impeachment, wait till after the can just kept getting kicked down the road in a kind of sense of, oh, this is when we're going to be willing to actually talk about this stuff. And then you realize, no, nobody's actually interested in talking about it, period, because they understand where their engagement comes from. And it's too difficult to switch it up. And I do this in my Twitter. The other day I tweeted something about AOC that, now this is a complicated topic because AOC is not somebody who I've paid attention to. I know she's polarizing, so I've just not even gone there. But I just tweeted, and I actually I was going surfing in LA, and there was a mural. I'll post this to my Twitter. There's a mural of all of these, like Mario. What's that guy from Access Hollywood or whatever? Mario Lopez. Yeah. Mario Lopez was on the mural, and next to him was like AOC and like others. So some kind of mural about like Latino influencers and so forth. And the AOC picture had red paint splattered on the face. And I was like, whoa, that's hardcore. That's terrible. And I took a couple pictures of it. So, going back to the Capitol stuff, and I know people you have to understand that this woman does get threatened a lot. And again, we have to deal with each other's, what's the word that I'm looking for? I don't know, not zealotry. If somebody's a zealot, if they're that sort of, there's things that are going to rub you the wrong way, and you have to be tolerant about it. And I would say that. And so I posted something. I know that's totally quote unquote off brand, since I've been questioning the Twitter, sphere, and how virtue points have been trending, and how it's essentially pushed our media in a certain way. But on the other hand, when she was, raising money, and I know it's being presented in this way, it is good to raise money for people in Texas who are suffering. So, you put that out there, and if people want to have a greater discussion about that, then they can. But what you realize is that these receptors sort of twitch inside, and you're saying, well, I want to post this, but I know that this is very different than what I usually post. And all these synapses are firing off saying, if you do, you're going to lose this many followers, and this many people are going to actually be pissed off at you. And then you just got to just erase all that, and you just post it because you find it to be interesting, and you just do it, and you don't think of it about that. That's my take. And that's why I did research the Gina Carano situation so thoroughly, was because I think people should be able to put out ideas into the public square without being condemned, especially if it's something that you didn't write yourself. It's just a meme, and it ends with a question saying, is being persecuted but for your otherness the same as your political beliefs? Now, you can disagree with that and say, no, absolutely not. And that's fine. That's fine. But you're allowed to ask those questions. You're allowed to put out ideas in the public square without being persecuted. It has to be that way. It can't be the other thing, And just as people are going after people and trying to cancel them, throwing paint on a picture of AOC is the same kind of cancellation. And I'm against it. I'm against it across the boards. Don't try to defame people's symbols and people's who they are, murals, or cancel them in the public square or the Twitterverse, wherever. So I feel strongly about that. And I feel strongly that people should be able to look at other sides. And unfortunately, all of these news organizations are completely pigeonholed. They can't stray because for them, it's a bottom line. What happens if the Twitter mob goes against them because they printed that article that was critical about left-wing black bloc beating up people in Sacramento? Well, they can't print that. And that's how cowardly and beholden our media is right now.
Well, and you're exactly right, because that's the times that we're in, and they're very interesting times because as let's say you trying to build an audience, right? Because you have something to say and you have a good message to say, but sensationalism sells either on the left or on the right. So the polarization, you've got to be on the far end of the polarization to get everybody excited. And, there's been plenty of polls and plenty of studies showing that if you're more down the middle, making sense, crying for unity, that is going to cause less engagement. And quite honestly, you'll lose followers from both sides, right? So if you're not all the way left saying, oh yeah, burn it down, and you go and you say something positive about a right policy, you're going to lose a left followers, and it's going to be the same thing on the other side. And so, you know, we're in a tough spot, and there are a lot of people like you that are trying to navigate these waters, and I certainly hope that you find a way to navigate these waters, and hopefully through conversations like this, through that conversation that you and Brett Weinstein had. Fantastic conversation. I loved every second of it. And, you know, that got hundreds of thousands of views. I'm very happy to see that. And that's what we need to do. That's precisely what we need to do to take back our country. People like you have a lot of good things to say. People like Brett have a lot of good things to say. People like BG that have a lot of good things to show. And that's what we need to do. We need to start dealing with truth, and we need to can the hyperbole. We really do. It's damaging.
We do it. And Twitter is all about hyperbole. So in some cases, we need to demand of our reporters that they disconnect and disengage and don't make Twitter their, because this is the other thing. The people that read them might not be the same people that are on Twitter. You know what I mean? Your fan base that follows you, if you're, let's say, I don't know, well, I don't know. Maybe they are all Twitter. I don't know. Certainly you'll get backlash. That's the problem, is that they're beholden to these accounts, the heavies. You have these activist accounts that are so robust that they have 180,000 people at their fingertips. And some of the people that are at their fingertips also have 180,000 people. So when you get those Twitter storms generated because Vox wrote an article that was critical of Antifa in a mythological alternative universe, because they would never. But you know what I'm saying? If one of these the Huffington Post wrote a publication that actually looked at extremism holistically and said, we have problems on this and we probably have this side. And this is the other talking point. It's not about both sides. You're both sides that, well, how about every side? Not just both sides, but how about every side? That's my logo up there. It's you're looking at it circularly, and Gotcha. We're trying to figure out holistically where the problems are coming from. Because just because this crazy person shot somebody and they happen to be of that wing does not mean they represent the entire wing. Just like Michael Reinl, who went and shot and killed somebody in Portland and stalked them, basically, is in a parking garage. You could see it, you know, at the end of August. Just because he does that, he doesn't represent the entire left wing. So we can't look at it so narrowly. And the same thing goes to, and when I get the Star Wars stuff out, you'll see it's kind of the same thing, in the sense that the way it's a microcosm. I was talking to a friend of mine, and we were talking about how it's kind of a microcosm for all these other subcultures, but you have no operational security. If you're a Star Wars troll, you're just a fan troll. Your account is dedicated to just splatting all this stuff out there, being critical, saying shit, and it's all out there in the open. So it's actually much more, it was easier in some ways to find who the main instigators were, and then track how they're able to influence all the way to the pages of Rolling Stone and Newsweek. And we didn't used to have that. We didn't used to have where one person having a bad day who decides to see something and just take it to 11.5 is able to actually create the narrative that's written in Rolling Stone magazine.
I very much look forward to reading that, or if you're going to do a video on that, I really want to see that, how you untangle that web. I think that's going to be very, very interesting.
It's fascinating. It's fascinating because people are hitting on everything that we're talking about, like the snaps, is just everything that's going off. They see one person say it, and then they try to top that person in some other way to get just as much engagement that that person is getting. And so it just snowballs in this profoundly like scary and yet also ethically dubious way, where it carries over to these sort of gateway accounts that look like, in the case of the Gina Carano thing, it was called Discussing Film. Well, Discussing Film is a website, but it's not like, it's from what I can tell, they don't have magazines or whatever, but it's a website and they're tweeting and they're trying to get engagement. So they go right in and they say this disgusting post, which did this and this. So first of all, you have a account with 180,000 followers discussing film, and they slide in on the wave that's already churning, and they echo the exact talking point of the fan who had tweeted 4,000 times in 2 months about Star Wars and is just on this sort of obsessive thing. Now they tweet it, and then somebody at Vox or Daily Beast sees it, and then they legitimize it in tabloid form. And then Newsweek or Rolling Stone says, well, Daily Beast has it and Vox has it, so therefore we're going to have it too. Next thing you know, your publications of record are basically just echoing a rage point from somebody, in the case of Gina Carano, who was having, it seemed, a bad month, was oversharing a lot, and I'm making gestures because I don't want to say something that I get dinged for later. I've actually been communicating with this person and trying to figure out, just exactly what the impetus was to project all this other stuff onto this one woman. And so you have this profound sort of series of happenings where one person can get something going and get a star fired at the biggest entertainment company in the entire world. And it's jaw-dropping. It's profound, it's scary, and it's knitted around this culture, or one of these subcultures, where people feel power and that they can have their say, and that this is their product, and therefore they're the fans. They're the it's similar to people, how people feel about, the government, that this is ours. And so therefore we, and certainly you have a better argument with that. I'd like to think that it is a government of the people and should be, but the way they are coming in hot and emotionally and not acting as good faith, honest brokers of the content, but emotional instigators manipulating the content specifically for the purpose of engagement and an end which matches them wanting it their way, essentially. So,
well, when we have the Voxes of the world and the Business Insiders of the world basically mimicking a fan account, or whatever the source of that account was, we're in a bit of a situation. Got an earthquake over there in California.
Those are cat-like reflexes. Did you see that, folks?
It's all that surfing, brother.
It's the surfing. It's being at civil unrest for 8 months or whatever. Cat-like reflexes.
Yeah, and before we go, I wanted to ask you something. Since you're kind of talking a lot of truth, do you find it that you really have to watch your back when you're out here with the Black Bloc and the BLM and the Antifa, protests? Do you? I would trust that you don't feel that from Trump supporters. Maybe you feel that way from Proud Boys, but do you feel like you have to watch your back a little bit?
I mean, we could go through each one. When you're in, I remember there was this one time this drunk Proud Boy looked at me. He's like, "Are you patriot?" I was like,
America.
yeah, you're a patriot. I was like, I love this country. I always have. I always have.
That's
So
good stuff.
yeah. So but it was funny. But you know that look, I've never been scared. The most it went off the rails was I was in Seattle and I had a camera and I since then I've covered it was a hidden camera, let's just say. And it has a red light that lights up so I know it's rolling. And since then I've covered that up with black electric tape because somebody saw it and somebody saw the reflection. It's here it goes again. Somebody saw the reflection of the red light or something, and they came up to me and were like, "You're taping." And so I'm surrounded by these guys in black bloc, but to be quite honest, they looked like they were like sophomores and so I was like, yeah, man. Yeah, no, I'm filming. They're like, why are you filming? It's freaking everybody out. What the hell? I was like, because I'm ready to go, man. I'm ready to go, man. If we're going to go up against these cops right now, I want it on tape. They're like, okay, well, just don't film because it's really freaking everybody out. I was like, all right, man. No, that's cool. Like, I just tried to act as like more aggro than they were, and it worked. And then they were just like, left me alone. I was like, no, yeah, okay, fine. But but that was the one
hilarious.
time.
Do you find that a lot of it is kids? Just it's kid stuff running around, or are there real serious actors?
In the Pacific Northwest, I would say. In Atlanta, the anti-fascists were armed, you know. Actually in Tacoma as well. When I walked around in Tacoma on, I think it was January the 24th, that was people with long guns were at the point for that. So there's people who show up that have the same militia, but so you're putting your faith that everybody who shows up with a long gun are like 2A people that know what they're doing.
Right.
That's the big sort of wild card is everybody that shows up that person. So far it's been, I just think we're playing with it. There've been so many other situations where I said this could have gone so much worse, as bad as it is. And Kenosha is even one of them. Kyle Rittenhouse, because as much as with the talking point, no, this is the other thing I've learned to do is pair different talking points. If you look at the video, you know that he was there to offer medical help to Bill. And he does that in a video that I posted. Well, he defends Kyle Rittenhouse because I tell the story. I defend the integrity of media and our society to not judge each other by slurs and polarize and manipulate and weaponize information. That's what I defend. But I will say this, he's quite simply offers medical attention incessantly to a point where one of the live streamers, I think he's called The Rundown, says, look, dude, they have their own medics. Okay. You don't have to keep offering medical attention to anybody, but he does at one point. And he's like, excuse me, I can't talk to you now, to like one guy who's telling him medic. And then I found the other video and I edited it together. And so you see him seamlessly enter into the cell phone video of him treating Black Lives Matter protesters and just being very excited to do it. He's just basically an eager beaver ultra Boy Scout who is also, a Trump supporter, but that does not make him a white supremacist. I mean, and that I would have to go back and analyze Kenosha in the same way that I did. It would be very interesting to trace how the white supremacist, how that was used in tweets and what outlets absorbed it, because certainly I don't think the New York Times or any like reputable paper of record has absorbed that, but it'll be interesting to see which ones did, who picked that up. And the reason I say I pair talking points is because as soon as I tell you that, I will say that obviously him not being legally licensed in that situation and him being by himself was extremely dangerous because in the second volley, the first shot that he fires misses the head of a middle-aged black man by a couple of inches. And you think that this conversation's hot right now.
That narrative would have been so much different had that shot landed.
2 inches, I kid you not. You see the smoke go up. And this is BG's video that I'm talking about, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys, if you don't follow BG on the scene, check out episode 11 of Unblocked podcast, youtube.com/unblocked live. You could also follow BG on the scene on, I think, every platform. That's pretty, just like I have Unblocked live, pretty standardized platform to platform. He's BG on the scene. And episode 11, we compare notes. I want to have a larger discussion where I get BG and like Ford Fisher, Richie McGinnis all together and just sort of play a couple of videos and talk about, where our notes match up. And I'll be honest, from the conversations I've had with each of those guys individually, we don't disagree a lot because we're there, so there's a kind of objective consensus, not because we all think the same or have the same political leanings. They're actually quite diverse amongst us, but because we were there as honest brokers, our stories match up. It'll be interesting to see if we can find points where our stories don't match up. It would be very interesting. So thank you for your support of being someone who's been behind the kind of journalism that guys like myself and BG and others are out there trying to do to get the video. Certainly, in podcasts, I talk very freely, but if you look at my work on publicreport.org, it's very methodical. It's not opinionated. So if you haven't gone to publicreport.org and you want more, please go check it out. I have the final report up in PDF file in which I was going to have it published, but the trick was it was a libertarian publication that wanted to publish it, and I got the changes back, and it made me sound like a right-wing person going after the left. And so it's really tricky because there are a few publications that want to just print something that is so extensive, nuanced, and complicated as my writing. So that's why I have it up on publicreport.org if you really want to take a look. I want to give you one more chance to sort of talk about what you're passionate about. Tell me about, for those of us who do not know about the coming automation, and universal income and why that spoke to you. What kind of industry that you were in that you were automating and when you say that UBI with a VAT tax would work, what examples or what data do you have that really brings you to that sort of conclusion and understanding of how universal basic income would work?
Well, there's plenty of studies that have been done and showing that extracting funds from the existing economy and placing them into the people's hands to basically create a trickle-up economy as opposed to a trickle-down, which is what we've been doing for the past decades, it does work. And it's undeniable that widespread automation is going to hit our economy. It already has. I mean, hell, I've done it. But it's going to hit on a widespread basis. And, not to get too boring, but when you start to have the marginal cost of goods and services going down because of automation, and you don't need to pay employees anymore, you're going to have a distraught economy. And it's simply going to happen. And no, it will not create inflation because, like I said, the marginal cost of goods and services are going to go down. You're going to extract the funds from an existing economy. You're not going to print new money, and you're going to inject it into the people's hands, which makes what we call high velocity liquidity. So that money will be spent into the economy, and that's how we save the economy. So it's not about the dichotomy anymore of capitalism v socialism. Okay. It's not even a hybrid of the two. We have to think about things in a completely different light. And if we want capitalism to survive, we have to institute universal basic income, and to get politicians that are brave enough to go for universal basic income and to fight for universal basic income. We are going to need to have ranked choice voting, and we're going to have open primaries. And we can do that in 26 states where we have direct ballot initiative states. So we can get these things passed because the politicians don't want this, because the donor class, they simply do not want this. But universal basic income, it is the future. I hope that it's going to be the present. There's a lot of interest in it right now because of COVID, unfortunately. But this has accelerated the coming catastrophe that is our economy that's coming up. And like Eric Weinstein said, capitalism never knew that it was going to be eaten by its son, technology. And he's absolutely right. And that's exactly what's happening to our economy. And universal basic income is going to happen. It just depends on when it happens and how many people have to be hurt before we wise up and actually get it instituted and get people to understand the policy.
And what do you say to your cultural sphere when or hemisphere, I should say, when they say, "Hey, that's socialism," or what have you? How do you explain the how and the why?
Well, it's not socialism because, we're not, look, the old school thought of socialism is taking the means of production, right? And we're not doing that. We're not talking about that. You're talking about taking money from an economy that already exists and giving it to people. And something that people can understand is money, right? So even if people don't understand macroeconomics and you tell them, look, we're going to inject $1,000, $1,200, whatnot, into your hands if you're over the age of 18 and you're an American citizen every month for the rest of your life, that is an attractive policy. And so even if you're not a high information voter and you can get behind something like that, that's all I want, because people like us that do study and work in economics, we're the ones that'll be pushing this. And there are some very thoughtful politicians out there that are pushing it, and we will get it passed. And absolutely right, Yamashita. I see her on Twitter. Nice to see you. The VAT is the most important part because you have to extract the funds from the existing money supply. If you don't, you're going to create inflation, and we cannot afford inflation. 40% of every dollar that's been that's in existence, a U.S. dollar, has been printed during this crisis. So we are already looking at a hyperinflative market, and I feel for the stock market. I feel for the housing market. I feel they're both in a bubble. They're both going to crash. Printing money is not the answer. And like I said, VAT. Financial trend taxes. We need to extract the money from the existing market and place it into the people's hands so they can use the velocity of that money.
Thanks so much for being with us. T4Y podcast. I'm Jeremy Lee Quinn. Follow us both on Twitter. This is youtube.com/unblocked live. Next week I have who do I have on Monday? I'm still supposed to talk to Kim Brown. If you've listened to the podcast, I think it's episode 13. That's on audio. We're going to have a much more in-depth discussion about policing, about race, about a lot of different topics. So you'll want to catch that next Monday. Then I have a comedian this Wednesday, Joyelle Nicole Johnson, a friend of mine from the New York comedy scene. So folks are going to want to check that out. That'll be this Wednesday at 1 p.m. We're on Mondays and Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Joyelle has opened for Dave Chappelle. She's hilarious. She just moved from New York. She did that New York to Atlanta move. So we're going to get a lot about the Atlanta scene and talk a little politics too. So in all these discussions, I really enjoy this. And thank you again for being so supportive and coming on the show today.
Thank you, Jeremy. Keep up your good work. It's important, man.
All right. And everybody who has joined us, please keep staying tuned and follow us on Twitter. And let's have a lot more long conversations like this in the future.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you.